Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Tanks with the Mighty Jingles, and it is tank review time once again. Today we're going to be taking a long-awaited look, and not just long-awaited because you've been waiting for me to review the tank, although a lot of you have, but also because we've been waiting since forever for this tank to finally make it into the game. It is, of course, the Sherman Firefly, a British Tier 6 medium tank based on the chassis of the M4 Sherman, except fitted with a redesigned turret in order to accommodate that British 17-pounder anti-tank gun. But before we get started, there is something that every new Sherman Firefly owner has to do. It's think of it as a ritual of sorts. You go to your tank commander and you rename him to Malcolm Reynolds. What do you mean, why? Does nobody watch Firefly? What do they teach you kids in school these days? I don't know. Anyway, the tank. I was kind of worried when I heard that the Firefly was coming in patch 9.5, that it was never going to live up to its own hype, and I think to an extent that is actually very true. People have been waiting for this tank to get into the game for so long that there is just no way it's ever going to be as good as everybody hopes it was going to be. It's not a bad tank, but there are definitely aspects to this machine that are going to leave people feeling very, very disappointed. The gun is great. Let's just get that out of the way right at the start. That 17-pounder gun is very, very good. It's got the best penetration of any Tier 6 medium tank. Hell, it's got better penetration than a lot of Tier 6 tank destroyers. In fact, just about the only things in Tier 6 that have better penetration than this are the French 90mm armed machines like the ARL-44 and the ARL-V39 tank destroyer. And that's about it. Oh, the SU-100Y as well, the premium Russian tank destroyer, has a 130mm gun with better penetration than this 17-pounder. Other than that, this is pretty much the best you can get. Let's take a look at the gun in greater detail. The British wanted to fit this 17-pounder gun to the chassis of the Sherman in order to give their tank crews a one-shot kill capability against tanks like Panthers and Tigers at non-suicidal combat ranges. The threat actually posed by the Tigers and the Panthers on the Western Front was blown out of all proportion to the reality. There was a tendency among Western tank crews that any time one of their tanks got hit by something that they couldn't see, they would all just shout, "Tiger!" Such was the reputation of the Tiger tank. And of course, when the Germans went and introduced the Tiger II, the Western Allies were just, "Oh, come on, Germany. I mean, for God's sake, you've already got the Panther and the Tiger. What do you need this for?" But nevertheless, you know, the perception was there that every tank hiding in the bushes was a Tiger with an 88mm gun. And in order to actually be able to stand a chance of putting a shot through the front of a Tiger at reasonable combat ranges, whereas the 75 and 76mm guns that the American tanks were equipped with just really couldn't do it, the 17-pounder had a fighting chance. Now, the Sherman was never designed to take a gun as big as the 17-pounder, so in order to make it fit, they had to get a bit ingenious, and what they did was they took the radio out of the back of the turret in order to make space for the breech of the 17-pounder gun. They then cut a hole in the back of the turret and mounted the radio in a box known as a bustle, in its own little armoured shell. You can see it there at the back of the turret. Then they turned the gun on its side, so instead of loading it from the side, the loader had to load it from above, and bingo, suddenly the 17-pounder fitted inside the turret of the Sherman. With 171mm of penetration, you are looking at the Tier 6 medium tank with the best penetration in the game. Hell, it's not just got the best penetration of any Tier 6 medium, it's got the best penetration of almost all of the Tier 6s. In fact, the only things that have more penetration than this at Tier 6 are the French 90mm DCA-45 cannon-armed machines like the ARL-44 heavy tank or the ARL-V39 tank destroyer, and I think the only other thing that beats this thing for penetration at Tier 6 is the SU-100Y, the infamous box tank, premium Tier 6 Soviet tank destroyer, with its 130mm gun. And of course the Firefly has that beat 6 different ways to Sunday as far as rate of fire is concerned. If you were to load premium APCR ammunition into this gun, you get 239mm of penetration on a Tier 6 medium tank. Is that overpowered? Well, I'm going to argue no, and I'll tell you why. The rest of the stats of the gun, well, it is, at the end of the day, a 76.2mm gun, so don't expect a lot of alpha damage. It only does 150 damage per shot, but the rate of fire is good. The accuracy leaves a lot to be desired, 0.38, but the aiming time is pretty good, 2.1 seconds. The gun is definitely the single outstanding feature on this tank, but it's not just a gun. You know, there's a tank attached to it as well. What about the rest of the machine? Well, the radio is terrible. It is really, really bad. It only has a 550 meter signal range. It's a pretty badly armoured tank as well. The hull has no more than 50mm at the front, the sides are 38, and the sides even have these handy little armour patches showing you exactly where you need to aim in order to hit the ammo racks. The turret, at the most, 76mm at the front, 50 at the sides and rear. But it's unfair to be too critical of the armour. I mean, it is a Sherman after all. The Sherman's armour was designed to protect the crew from hits from 37, at the most 50mm anti-tank guns, so in that respect it works exactly as intended. If only the Sherman got balanced against tanks that had 37 and 50mm anti-tank guns, then this thing would be overpowered. But the armour is definitely one of the balancing factors, or rather, the lack of armour is definitely one of the balancing factors of this tank. But hang on a minute, Jingles, what about the American Shermans? I mean, their armour's no better than this, and they don't get that 17-pounder gun. I'm still calling overpowered. Well, okay, but there's one other aspect of the Sherman Firefly that we haven't actually looked at yet, and that's to do with the mobility. And boy oh boy, this tank is slow. With a 36km/h top speed, this thing is 1km/h faster than a KV-2 or a T-150, and those tanks are not known for their great mobility. Just to put this into further perspective for you, if you were the last tank left on your team in a Tier 6 match in the Sherman Firefly, and all you had left to kill on the enemy team was the Tier 6 artillery, you would not be able to catch them. They're all faster than the Sherman Firefly. So what you basically have with the Sherman Firefly is a very, very good gun mounted on a thoroughly mediocre chassis. Let's not forget that a tank is not just a gun. You have to have some method of getting that gun around the battlefield. And the method by which the British in World of Tanks haul that 17-pounder gun around the battlefield down at Tier 6 in the Firefly is just not very good. You know, I'm tempted to write this off as a great gun mounted on a bad tank, but that's not being completely fair. I mean, look at the other Tier 6 Shermans, the EZ-8 and the Jumbo. They're basically the same machines, just with the characteristics swapped around. The EZ-8 is basically this tank with a different gun and much, much better mobility. The Sherman Jumbo is not the most mobile tank in the game either, and it's effectively a Sherman Firefly with better armour and a different gun. And yet when I'm driving the Sherman Jumbo, I don't think it's too slow. I accept that this is not a particularly mobile tank. It's not terribly slow, but it's certainly not a speed demon. And yet when you're driving the Firefly, you can't help but thinking, what is it that is slowing this thing down? It can't be the armour, because it doesn't have any. And the lack of speed is a real millstone around the neck of this tank. That, combined with a lack of armour, means that you cannot really drive this thing as a fast medium tank, because it is not a fast medium tank. It's a very slow medium tank. And the lack of armour and the lack of speed really sort of negates the otherwise excellent mobility characteristics of this tank. The track traverse and the turret traverse are both very, very good, but you can't really use this thing to get around the sides and rear of enemy tanks because it's just not quick enough to get there in the first place. I realise I'm sounding very negative in this review so far, and I really don't mean that to be the case. It's just that, you know, this is not a bad tank. It's just not a very good tank, except for the gun. And I think what's happening here is I'm becoming a victim of the hype of the Firefly. I'm expecting the Firefly to be better than it is, when it is, taking everything into consideration, the great gun, the lousy speed, the terrible armour, it's no better or no worse in its own way than the Sherman Jumbo or the EZ-8. And that's pretty much exactly as it should be, because they're all Tier 6 mediums based on the Sherman chassis. And yet I can't help but feel that this would be a great tank if it was only just that little bit faster. And I'll show you the sort of thing I mean in my first replay to Tier 6 Firefly match on the Sound River map. Well, here we are. I'm only in a 2-man platoon this time, instead of my usual 3-man platoon. This time it's just me and Circumflexers. We're both on a Sherman Fireflies. Tier 6 maximum game on Sand River. Now, that just up ahead of me is a KV-85, and the KV-85, fact fans, with the exception of the TOG-2, is, I think, the slowest Tier 6 tank in World of Tanks, and I am barely overtaking him. In fact, no, he's overtaking me. No, stop that, bugger off, come on. There we go, that extra 2 km/h top speed making its presence felt. I was able to overtake one of the slowest tanks at tier 6. And I really don't know where this lack of speed comes from on the Firefly. It's certainly not the armour slowing the thing down, because it doesn't have any. The real thing was capable of doing 40 kilometres per hour. And I'd actually be very happy with a Firefly if it could do 40 kph. It's only 4 kilometres per hour faster than its current top speed of 36. At 40 kilometres per hour, it certainly wouldn't be a fast medium tank, but it wouldn't be a slow one either. And that lack of speed is going to cost me a kill and some damage done on the first tank spotted as we all labour away up this ridge here. Zircon started 30 metres further north than I did, and that small difference, that 30 metres difference between the two starting positions of these tanks, is the difference between getting a kill and arriving too late to do anything but look at the pretty burning tank. And that is the Sherman Firefly for you. It's not the last time that's going to happen in this game. Of course, I know why they've limited the speed to 36 kilometers per hour, even though it's entirely unhistorical. The real Firefly could do 40 kilometers per hour. And it's because, well, Wargaming like to blow the historical accuracy trumpet whenever it suits them. But if they have to nerf a tank unhistorically for game balance reasons, then they go right ahead and nerf it, and that's basically what they've done with the Firefly. And I don't really have a problem with that, because, let's face it, if this tank had this gun and the mobility of something like the EZ-8, it would be ridiculously overpowered. There would be no point whatsoever in driving tanks like the EZ-8. The mobility is the only advantage the EZ-8 has over the Firefly. So to give the Firefly more mobility, it just wouldn't be fair to EZ-8 drivers. You can't give the Firefly more armour. It's not fair to... Well, for a start, the Firefly didn't... You know, the armour on the Firefly is fine. It's a Sherman. I don't expect it to be very, very well armoured. It's certainly not an assault Sherman like the Jumbo. So, the lack of mobility, I understand the reasons behind it, even if it isn't historically accurate. At least it does have this 17-pounder gun. But the lack of mobility does limit the opportunities for you to use this 17-pounder gun. I'll show you the sort of thing I'm talking about. Well, you've already seen one example. There are more. So we've got a Valentine over there. Oh, target's up. Okay. Gun depression? Not bad, but not great either. Side shot, takes his tracks off, and he's dead before I can reload. Swing the turret around, Valentine, and he's dead before I can aim. It's going to be one of those games. Okay, well, there's still targets to shoot at, and you know, half of this is probably my own fault. Circumflexes was right there up with me, and he did not waste any time getting that tank moving again the second there was no longer anything to shoot at, and I'm just sitting around looking for more targets. So part of this is my own fault. A lot of this is me rather than the tank. I just don't clear my targets, check my map, and get the tank moving again in the right direction as quickly as I could be doing. And that's down to just generally poor situational awareness on my behalf. Or I'm just not processing the information available from the map and what I'm seeing on screen in front of me as quickly as somebody as Circumflexes does. So, you know, I'm sitting here blaming the tank. It's not all the tank. I mean, it is the tank, but it's me as well. Next up, I've got targets to the left and targets to the right, but I can actually hit that 361H, or I could if the shot had gone anywhere near where I aimed it. But the second shot flies true. 0.38 accuracy on this gun. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not good. So those guys over to the right are falling back. And I think the KV-1 that was over to the left has just died, which means the Type 58 is the only one left there. Now those guys on the right are falling back, but the Type 58 is coming forward, so that's made my mind up for me. The Type 58 will have shots into the side and rear of the tank if I was to pursue the VK361H, so I have to go after the Type 58. Now we're both on full health, and we're both tier 6 mediums. And my first shot bounces. So I pull back, reload, and then we start exchanging fire. And I've actually managed to get the Firefly in the kind of situation that the Firefly almost never gets into, a close range knife fight. My third shot blew his tracks off, and that is obviously going to help. But the thing is, and well, it's also helped by the fact that the Type 58 driver starts turning his tank the wrong way, so he can't actually turn the turret around and point his gun at me. But with the very, very good track traverse and very good turret traverse of the Firefly, if you ever find yourself in the situation, which isn't going to happen too often because you're not fast enough to get there a lot of the time, but if you do find yourself in the situation where you're dogfighting with another tank, it's actually not bad at it. Now I'm playing catch-up again. There's only 2 tanks left. There's the T-28. 2.1 second aiming time. 0.38 accuracy. And it missed. It didn't miss by much, but it missed. Which just leaves the VK-361H left to kill. And he's already taken hits from circumflexes. Am I going to get there in time? Oh, he's taking another hit from circumflexes. Stop shooting at him, circumflexes. I want some kills. Come on. Oh, he's pulled back. Circumflexes doesn't have shots at him anymore. I might get a kill. I might get... Oh, he's hit me again. Oh, yeah. Sherman Firefly. Forever late to the party. Screw it, I'll shoot him anyway. For consolation's sake. And, you know, that's fairly typical of my games in the Sherman Firefly. I'm constantly coming out of battles in this tank with a sort of feeling of vague disappointment that if the thing had just been that little bit faster, I could have done so much more. Or if I'd been better at getting the tank moving again after taking a shot, then I could have done so much better. But having said that, I mean, Circumflexes was clearly better than I was during that game at getting the tank moving again and going after the next target, and yet I still managed to do more damage than and get more experience than him. But still... And Circumflexes definitely agrees with me. He has the same opinion. If this tank was just that little bit faster, it would be a great tank. But therein lies the problem. If this tank was a little bit faster, it would be an overpowered tank. Our final replay in this review comes courtesy of Helldiver, and he is also in a Tier 6 maximum game. This time he's on the Northwest map. And I think it's probably safe to say that Helldiver gets the Firefly better than I do, at least judging by his performance in this game. I don't really want to say you should drive the Firefly like a tank destroyer, but you should probably drive the Firefly like a tank destroyer, and that's pretty much what Helldiver does in this game, and, well, he seems to do alright out of it. I'm sure you'll agree when you see the results. So let's have a look. What do they have? What do they have that's Tier 6? Well, they've got a Hummel, they've got a box tank, they've got a flat Panzer, they've got a T-34-85, a TOG-2, T-150 and an M6. Absolutely none of those tanks are any problem for the 17-pounder gun. And you're pretty much going to find that's the case in any Tier 6 and most Tier 7 games that you get this thing into. The gun really is exceptionally good. Accuracy, not great, but the accuracy is not that much better and not that much worse than any of the other Tier 6 mediums. So nothing to really complain about there, and the rate of fire makes up for any deficiency in the accuracy. If at first you miss, just try and try again. Nothing spotted yet on this side of the map, except for a flak toaster with a death wish. Thinly armoured vehicle, furthest one forward, first one to get spotted, first one to die. He switched to high explosive ammunition here. Unfortunately, high explosive is not going to go through, it's just going to blow away his cover, but now he has the HE loaded, the flak toaster tries to pull back, that's a guaranteed kill. So there's his first kill, and he has been spotted by the dying flak toaster, but nobody's in a position to put any shots into him. And there's another one. You know, top tip, flak bus drivers, when you're driving machines that only have 350 health and have chocolate fire guards for armour, you rely on stealth for survival. So, just because you can do 50 kilometers per hour doesn't mean that you have to. You should be letting tanks like that go ahead first. Let them spot targets for you. You shoot at the targets that they detect. You don't want to be finding targets for yourself when you're driving something as easy to kill as that thing. They're losing 5-1 now. 6-1. He's awfully shy. Oh, there we go. He's got him. Blown his tracks off. He's going to force this guy to use a repair kit, because the rate of fire on the Firefly is entirely capable of keeping that Churchill permanently tracked if he just relies on his crew's repair skills. So he's had to use a repair kit, but Helldiver is paying attention to the map. Team's losing 2-7. Have a look at the other flank. Half the enemy team is now rolling into his base with next to no opposition. So at just the right moment, bearing in mind the limited speed of the Firefly, and he doesn't have that far back to go, but he's heading back to base to try to do something about this. Nope, doesn't have a shot there. Doesn't have a shot there. Gonna have to relocate. Nobody has eyes on these enemy tanks. I mean, they're going to soon. Artillery is going to have eyes on these enemy tanks very, very soon. And Helldiver needs to get this thing into a position to be able to do something about it sooner rather than later. 2 artillery sitting there in the cap, and they're probably sweating. They're now losing 410. Look at this. It's just a slaughter. Or it is, up until the point that Helldiver makes it back to this position. His first shot, yeah, missed, but T-34-85 missed his return shot. Is he going to get another shot into him before he gets into cover? Is he going to come out? He is. He's blown his tracks off. Come on, Artie, defend yourself. He's missed again. Come on, Artie, defend yourself. Good boy. But the T-34-85 brought friends. There's the T1 Heavy, and you can have some of this. There's the M6, and you can have some of this too. And there's the KV-1S. Now, M6. Is the M6 going to... He is going to come out. Okay, there's one, and artillery defends themselves yet again. Take a hit from the M6, but they managed to finish him off. There's the KV-1S. His first shot bounces, but this is the terrible gun depression of the KV-1S. Look at this. He's not on much of an angle there, but he is completely unable to point his gun at Helldiver's Firefly. And Helldiver finishes him off. They've just lost one of the artillery. The Jagdpanzer IV is struggling up the hill. I mean, he's gamely trying to come back and help his team out, but I suspect he's driving a stock machine and he just does not have the engine power for it. So with only one tank left down here, they've got to finish this guy off before the rest of the team arrives. They're still heavily outnumbered. Helldiver charges down the hill, gets behind the T1 Heavy. His first shot unfortunately bounces, the second one doesn't. T1 Heavy, well, Helldiver's got his attention now, and he takes a hit, but the Jagdpanzer IV finally arrives and gets the killing blow. And somebody's shooting at him, no idea who. He's in cover. Oh, there's the other Jagdpanzer. Helldiver starts manoeuvring to break line of sight, keep some obstructions between himself and that Jagdpanzer. But the Jagdpanzer is not the only member of the enemy team who has made it. There we go, he took a hit. Now that one went off his gun mantlet, and he was really, really lucky there, because what's shooting at him, we haven't seen him yet, we haven't seen him the entire game, but that was actually a hit from a 17-pounder gun. That was the TOG 2. He hasn't been spotted this entire game. The poor guy has just been driving forward for the last couple of minutes. Oh, hold on. Go for the tracks. If you can track him in that position, or you can just kill him. Either works. And there you go, he took another hit there. That was from the TOG. The TOG is down just past the flag in the centre of the valley over there. And he was using the Jagdpanzer IV to spot. He's actually outside of visual range, and he keeps putting shots in to Helldiver's last known position. He's trying to whittle his cover down. Helldiver can't really hang... Well, he could hang around here, but he doesn't want to. He wants to move up and get some flanking shots on that TOG. Unspotted TOG, he's going to have full health. And there he is, and he does have full health. You don't want to be trading shots with the same gun, with a tank that has twice the health that you do. So, yeah, he could have stayed in that position and just popped in and out and taken pot shots against the TOG, but it would have been playing into the TOG's hands. The TOG's got a lot more health. And the Firefly definitely, it's not the kind of tank that... You get tanks that, like the AMX M445, which isn't exactly overburdened with an abundance of armour either, but it's got a lot of health, and it can use its health to take hits while it puts its fantastic 90mm gun to work. You can't do that with the Sherman Firefly. You only have 750 health, so rather than sit there and take his chances against the TOG, he's manoeuvring to try to get around him. Whatever he's going to do, though, he better do it fast, because that TOG is not the only tank on the enemy team. They're still outnumbered 2-1. He's coming up here a bit cautiously. He's checking his corners, because the flak toaster was last spotted up in this direction. And then we have a bit of a surprise, because there he is. He's actually driven back all the way around the map, and he's now come up behind the Jagdpanzer IV, and he's killed him. So that changes things, but, well, it is, at the end of the day, Just a flak bus and 2 shots. Oh no, he missed. Oh, that's not good. That's not good. Oh, artillery's in trouble now. The TOG and the flak bus. Where the hell are they? Well, the flak bus is going to be behind that building, but he's outside of 50 metres, otherwise the artillery would have lit him up. Oh, there he is. Come on, come on. Come on, Artie, do it again. Go for the hat-trick. No, he's taking hits. He's taking hits. He's fired and he's missed. Artillery's doomed. He's making a go of it. He's bravely trying to bait this guy into coming forward, and it worked! Nice one. Well done, artillery. Lovely, lovely bit of teamwork there. Now he just has to find the TOG. And the TOG still has a lot of health, and there he is. And come on, come on, come on. It's 17-pounder versus 17-pounder. Oh my god, a bounce. Well, it's only fair. The TOG fired and bounced off his gun mantlet. And the TOG's fired and missed. And the TOG is trying to fire on the move, and the TOG is very good at firing on the move, but it's not that good. Not when Helldiver is giving him very, very little to shoot at. The TOG is not having a good day. Artillery's fired. It didn't look like it hit. And the TOG at least managed to kill the artillery. That M41 HMC did a fantastic job. He needs to kill this TOG before the rest of his team turn up. He's bounced another shot. Come on, TOG. I don't believe I'm actually rooting for the death of a TOG. Who are you and what have you done with the real jingles? There we go, he's got him. And there's the Hummel. Minimal damage, however. Immediately uses the repair kit, gets his arse moving. So, it was 5 against 1. He's killed the TOG. It's now 4 against 1. There's a Kolobanov's medal up for grabs here. And there's the T-150. Now, he spots him. The T-150 has terrible view range. So the T-150 has not spotted him. Now watch this for some masterful use of concealment. He spotted the guy and then pulled back. That tree is now breaking line of sight between him and the T-150. It's more than 15 meters away, so he can't see through the tree. But he just keeps pouring fire into the same location over and over and over, and bingo! Very nicely done. But can't afford to rest in his laurels because, wow, it's the Su-5. I was expecting the ELC, but, well, one shot is all it's going to take care of a tier 4 artillery, and suddenly it's gone from being 5 against 1 to 2 against 1. Things are not looking quite so bad after all. What they have left, a Hummel and an ELC AMX. Now, the ELC AMX can be a problem, but have a look at the map. In patch 9.5, Wargaming incorporated some of the elements from some popular mods like XVM into the basic structure of the World of Tanks game engine. If you go into your settings, you can enable things like last reported position of enemy tank. And if you look at the map, absolutely no sign of the ELC. He has not been spotted the entire game. Now, if a tank as fast as an ELC AMX in a tier 6 game has not been spotted, it's probably because he's been sitting AFK in the cap circle the entire game. If I was in Helldiver's position, that's certainly the assumption that I would be working from, and it seems to be that that's what Helldiver's thinking as well. However, that presents its own problems because the Hummel is definitely not asleep. The Hummel's already hit him once. And even if the ELC is AFK in the cap circle, he's still spotting Helldiver if Helldiver tries to cap. So, yeah, great. AFK ELC, it's free credits, free XP, free damage, it's a free kill. But he's still spotting you while you're shooting at him. And the Hummel, well, you see, he's kind of past the point of no return now. If the Hummel suddenly starts capping, they've lost this game because he is just not fast enough to get back and do anything about it. So it's all down to what the Hummel is doing. And there's the ELC. Yep, as predicted, AFK in the cap circle. So Helldiver stops and then realises, hang on, the Hummel's still in play. He doesn't stop, he slows down. He's got to keep moving and he's got to get into that cap circle because now the Hummel knows exactly where he is. The ELC is reporting his position. So without stopping, and he can pretty much, it doesn't really matter how good at firing on the move the Firefly is, when the ELC's not manoeuvring and not firing back, he can just take every shot he needs to kill this guy off, but he has to stay inside the cap circle. And with the ELC dead and no longer spotting for him, the Hummel has just lost his best opportunity to salvage a win from this game. Any shots he takes now are going to be blind, and he's got practically no chance of hitting Helldiver as long as he keeps moving. On the other hand, maybe the Hummel wasn't trying to cap. You see, at this point, you're playing a game of what's the Hummel doing. It's if the Hummel was trying to cap, and he probably was, he's never going to make it back in time. But if he wasn't trying to cap, he only has to get lucky once. And oh, there he is. Well, if he was trying to cap, he's already lost. But he's not. He's firing into the cap circle, and Helldiver happens to be sitting in the single most obvious spot of concealment in the entire cap circle. And the Hummel appears to just be firing randomly into the cap. It's not like he's aiming for the obvious spots of concealment. So rather than take any chances and sit in the obvious spots of concealment in case the Hummel, has a sudden rush of brain activity, he sits in a position where he can cover the likely avenues of approach in case the Hummel decides he's got to come up and take a direct shot, just in case he's close enough to do it. And this is a win. He's got it. Instead, the Hummel is just sitting there in top-down view, and he's randomly firing shots. There it is. Straight into the middle of the cap circle, just hoping to hit him. It's never going to happen. And Helldiver has won this game. Ace Tanker, Radley Walters, Kolobanov's Medal, High Caliber, Invader, and Top Gun. 80,000 credits earned. That's the kind of result you normally see in a Tier 8 Premium. He did over 5,000 damage. Sherman Firefly is not a bad tank. You cannot get a result like that in a bad tank, even against a bad team. But it was only Tier 6 Jingles. I'd like to see him do that in a Tier 8 match. Well, I'd like to see any Tier 6 medium do that in a Tier 8 match. It is just a Tier 6 medium at the end of the day. And, is it overpowered? That 17-pounder gun seems a bit too good. Well, no, of course it's not overpowered. It's balanced by the poor mobility and the terrible armour. Is it a great tank? No, it's not even a great tank. Is it the Sherman Firefly that everybody was hoping and expecting to get into World of Tanks? Probably not, no. I think everybody was expecting this tank to be a lot better than it is. And if it was better than it is, it would be overpowered. Yeah, sure, I wish the Firefly could go a bit faster than 36 kilometers per hour. If it had its historical 40 kilometers per hour speed, I would be overjoyed with this tank, but it doesn't. And if it did, it would probably be a little bit overpowered. So I completely understand why Wargaming have balanced it the way they have, even if it does make me a little sad. I like the Firefly. It's not great, but it's good enough. And as long as you don't have unrealistically high expectations of what you're going to get in a Sherman Firefly in World of Tanks, I think you're probably going to like it as well. You're certainly going to like the gun. The gun really is fantastic. As always, folks, take care on that battlefield, and I'll catch you next time.